Hey, good morning. Whew. How's everybody doing? Good to be together again. If we haven't yet met, my name's Joel. And thanks so much for joining us, whether you're joining us online or whether you're joining us on site. Thank you so much for being here this morning today. Great. I'm excited. We're kicking off a new series today, which is super looking forward to. I don't know, you've noticed this. We've all noticed this. Isn't it so hard to know nowadays what to believe? Like, there's so much information out there. And actually, psychologists, people are really looking into this because there's now a culture of misinformation. People intentionally spreading misinformation on purpose. It's quite a challenge. It's very difficult for our young people, or our children growing up. Most of the stuff that came in on my children's Instagram feeds about what was going on in Ukraine was actually ended up being fake news. It's a huge thing that happens. And just cast your mind back a while ago to COVID. And there's a lot of information and misinformation and confusing information and there's lots of stuff, right? I mean, it's getting harder nowadays to really know what to believe. But we know this. I mean, we know this as a society. We know this as a culture. And of course, we should be skeptical. We should use our brains. We've got brains. That's what they're there for. But when it comes to believing something or knowing something, this is what all of us do. And you don't have to be a follower of Jesus to know this is what we all do. This is what everyone does. We believe based on evidence. That's just common sense. We believe based on evidence, and we believe based on confidence. So you believe based on the evidence, and you also have confidence in the person or the source of the information. Which is why the best people at spreading false information make fake Twitter accounts to make it look like it came from a legitimate politician or legitimate journalist, because they want to give you greater confidence in the source of the information. But we all do this. We all believe based on evidence, and we all believe based on the confidence in the source. And when you're a little child in school and they say to you, that's the color blue and that's the color red, you believe them. You don't you don't go home and research it and double check with your parents, right? Okay, right. I was told today that this is the color blue. Is this really the color blue? Because you have confidence in what you're being told. So we all believe on those two things. Is that agreed? We believe based on the evidence and we believe based on the confidence. Think about it this way. Imagine if you're just going to go to a supermarket, and as you're getting to the supermarket, there's this little kid standing there. And he says to you, oh, there's no more bread today. There's no more bread. You're like, a weird little kid. What's going on? And you just carry on. And you think to yourself, you might think, what a weirdo. You might think, oh, that's sweet. Or like most people, you'll think, well, I'll just find out for myself. So as you go into the shop, you're doing that, looking into people's trolleys as they exit to see if they've got any bread. Because really you don't have any confidence in the source of the information. Now, what if you got to that same supermarket, and as you entered the doors, there was one of the managers standing there. And what she says to you is, she says, I'm really sorry to let you know, there's been a leak by our bakery section, and the bread just got all this water sprayed over it, and we actually have no bread that we're legally allowed to sell today, and we just want to make sure everything's okay and everything's safe. So I'm really sorry. We've got somebody coming in this evening to fix it, and tomorrow we've got a new delivery coming. Now, I guarantee that you would believe that person more. Even though they're giving you the same information, you'd believe that person more because you put your confidence in the source. It makes sense, right? We all know this. So you don't even have to be a Christian or a follower of Jesus to know that is common sense. This is what we do. This is how humanity works. And that just explains a little likely thing, and you put your trust in them because you trust in confidence. Now, I'm going to say something right now that some of you have known in the back of your mind. You've known this for years. When it comes to Christians and church stuff, for some reason, these words believe and faith take on a whole new meaning. They get weird somehow. Okay? They do. Stick with me. You'll know this is true. You see, for some reason, when it comes to belief and faith, we get rid of logic and reason. For some reason, we get rid of reason. Okay? This is true. And if you're not a follower of Jesus, you also know this is true because you might have some Christian friends in your life and you just kind of think, It's kind of weird because I don't know how they can believe what they believe because there's no logic to it. There's no reason to it. And then we do this thing that sometimes is said, and it goes a bit like this, if you believe, man, you just got to take it by faith. You just got to take it by faith. Or come on, you know what? You just have to believe. Or you need more faith. You just need more faith. Which for some, and I don't know how it's happened, right? Have you ever experienced that? I don't know how it happens. So somehow when it gets into like a church context, the words that we all understand, belief, faith, trust, all of a sudden in a church context or in a faith context, it somehow becomes a separate beast that we don't really understand. And this is true. And some of you are thinking, wow, I can't believe someone actually said this in public in a church meeting. Because maybe you've grown up in an environment where you were just told you need to have more faith. And if only you had more faith, some situation would have worked out better for you. You just have to believe. As if somehow you could muster this thing out, right? Think about it. If you could just have more faith, if you could just make it happen, right? It's just an interesting idea. It doesn't make sense. Really doesn't make sense. And some of you believe this already, and you're just glad it's finally been said. But if you're here today and you're exploring what it means to be a follower of Jesus, this is a really helpful thing for us all to make clear at the beginning. I've got some really, really good news for you. The first followers of Jesus didn't just have faith. They didn't just hope it would all work out. It wasn't some blind trust. It wasn't some blind just desire that, I hope it's going to work out. They believed based on evidence and confidence in the source. That's why they could have faith, because of the evidence and the confidence in the source. And somehow over the years we've forgotten that was how it worked for everybody. And in fact, here's the really, really good news. Jesus didn't expect any of his first followers to believe without evidence or confidence in the source. He didn't. He doesn't expect it of us. He didn't expect it of them either. They followed because they saw with their own eyes and they had confidence in the source. So this series, we're going to go on a journey through a book called John. John was one of Jesus' closest friends. You might have heard the word disciples or apostles. They get called different things. But basically, it's a gang of people that were followers. They were the closest group, if you like. They were the followers along with Jesus, and they all wrote books. And if John was alive today, he'd be really old. No, if John was alive today, he would tell us the same thing. He'd be like, I didn't believe in Jesus and just hope it would all work out. I didn't believe and just have some blind faith. I actually believed in everything I saw because I saw it, and I believed because I had confidence in the person that was doing this, you see? And he actually writes a book. And the crazy thing about it is he writes to us. He didn't realize it at the time, but he writes to us. He writes to people who weren't around because John wrote his book at the end of his life. He was the last disciple to die. All the rest of them got killed, martyred, if you like. But John didn't. John was sort of exiled and just died off on his own. He got put into a prison, and John writes his book later in life. And he writes this at the end of his book. When you were at school and you have to do that summing up statement at the end of your essay? This is John's summing up statement, and he writes this. Jesus did many other signs in front of other people. They're not written in the book. What book is he talking about? He's not talking about the Bible. The Bible did not exist. Okay? The Bible was not the Bible, which is just a collection of books. He's not saying many other things that were not in this book, many other things that were not in the book that I'm writing. The little record that John is writing, that's what he's referring to. So there's loads of other things that Jesus did in front of people, but they're not even recorded in the book, my book. But these signs are written, the signs that I've chosen to write are written so that you may believe. That was God. He just texted some of you. So that you may believe that Jesus is the Son of God, and that by believing, you can have life in his name. So the thing is, it's written so that you can believe. What do you believe? You can believe that Jesus really, really is the Son of God. And because you can believe that Jesus is the Son of God, you can have life. So John makes it really clear why he's doing what he's doing. Yeah? And it's really, really specific. He chooses certain things for certain reasons. He says, I'm going to give you the signs so you can know that Jesus is worth believing in. And the crazy thing is, the cool thing is, John is not telling you what to believe. See, sometimes maybe your family members have done this to you. Maybe some friends have done this to you. They kind of tell you what to believe. And you feel like you're being preached at. But John doesn't do that. John says, I want to give you the signs to point you in the right direction, and you can check out the signs for yourself so that you can believe that Jesus is the Son of God. And the outworking or the effect of you believing in Jesus is that you can have life in his name. I mean, isn't that cool? You see, over the years, somehow we forget maybe how the approach was supposed to go. You know, he's not telling you what you must do and how you must do it. He's actually just pointing the way for you, which is really cool. And John wants you to consider the evidence, if you like. John is inviting you to go on the same journey that he went on when he learned to believe in Jesus, which is really cool, yeah? And here's another really interesting thing. John uses this word. He says signs. Okay, now we all know what a road sign is. You know, you're driving along and it says this way, and you hope that helps give you the direction of way to go. A sign points us to something else. But John doesn't ever use, in this context, he doesn't use the word miracle. So John doesn't say these miracles. He actually says these signs. And he lists them as signs. Even though it can be a supernatural thing, he doesn't call it a miracle or a supernatural thing. He calls it a sign, which is really important because he wants us to capture that a sign directs, leads, points the way, if you like. So he refers to them as signs. And the reason he calls them signs is because they're not random events. They're not just like unconnected, spontaneous things that Jesus did. The signs point in such a way that they are evidence. That's what John is doing. He said it's not some just kind thing that God did at the time. No, it's a specific sign pointing the way for us. That's what it is, you know. And then John didn't believe in Jesus just because he hoped it would all work out. John believed in Jesus because of the signs that John saw. So John is going to share with us the signs that he saw, which is really cool. This is what I'm saying when John kind of like wrote a book to us. He didn't know it at the time, but he's written to the future. He didn't realize it. He just was at the end of his life, and he's the last apostle living, and he's going to record his experiences with the life of Jesus. You know, it's like, you know we do this in our own family sometimes. Have you ever had somebody in your family that's getting really, really old, and you think, you know, they're not going to be with us much longer? I'd love to know what life was like when they were younger. Oh, Grandma, can you tell me about the house you grew up in? Grandpa, what was it like during the war? You know, we do this, don't we do this in the natural? We want to find out. And John's at the end of his life, and you can just imagine people like, tell us about what it was like. You're the last man standing. You're the last disciple living. What was it like? And John records his experience for us, which is really cool. I think it's really cool. And if you read through the books that are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they're like biographies about the life of Jesus. If you read through those biographies, you find out that they went on their own journeys of belief and doubt and believing again and then doubting again and not knowing what it's really going on? And when Jesus rose from the dead, none of them believed it anyway? They have this like up and down thing going all the time, which should be super encouraging for all of us. So it should be really encouraging because these guys were not easy to convince. They weren't a group of idiots that were just stupid and went along with everything they saw. It's actually the opposite. They seem to question their trust in God even more than we do sometimes. Should be encouraging for all of us, whether you're a believer, a follower of Jesus or not, whether you're just exploring faith, this should be encouraging to you. And this is important for us and your friends and your neighbors and your colleagues and your family members and your loved ones. This is so important for us to get our heads around and our hearts around, because faith did not convince them. It wasn't faith that convinced them. It was what they saw that convinced them. That was the evidence. What they saw convinced them, you see? And this is why John makes a point of saying these signs. And throughout this series, that's what we're going to be looking at. And here's the process, if you like. Here's kind of how John does it. He says, there was a sign, which was an event, pointing to who Jesus is. That's kind of the order. So here's a sign, it's an event, and that event points to who Jesus is. That's the rhythm or the pattern, if you like, that John's going to use throughout this whole series. And this first sign, we're going to jump straight into the first sign, and it takes place at a party. It's cool. Jesus' first thing, some of you know this story. Jesus' first sign takes place at a party. And it's in John 2, and it says, on the third day, a wedding took place in Cana in Galilee. And Jesus' mother was there, and so was Jesus and his followers as they'd been invited. So John's saying, I was there. And when the wine was gone, Jesus' mother came and said to him, they have no more wine. So they're in a small village called Cana, which is in Galilee, and I looked it up. It's like 4 miles away. So that would be like us walking over to Hitchin. It's about 4 miles, another local town, from local to where they had all grown up, and they were all there. And then John gives us specific details. He tells us where it is and what it was and who was there. He's given us specific information, people, places. We talked about this before, didn't we? It's like a good journalist quotes their sources. So John's saying, this is the event, this is where it took place, this is who was there. If you have any questions about it, speak to these people. You can chase it up. You can find out what was going on. And you might know this, but in that day, wedding celebrations were like big deals. They went on for days, didn't they? And partly because if you think about it, they didn't have refrigerators and catering companies, yeah? If you were going to prepare something, if you kill a cow for a big feast, you have the whole cow and you have to eat it, right? So the best way to eat a whole lot of meat is to invite a whole lot of people. So they had a big barbecue, and it was a community thing. It was a cultural thing. The whole town would have known about it. The whole town would have been invited because it was a huge celebration in a very shared community type culture. And so these are big events. This isn't just if I've got 2 girls, I'm kind of glad it's not like that anymore. I'll just be like, hey, baby, I'm just giving you 500 pounds. You can take everybody to McDonald's. No. I don't know. But this was a huge event. This was like a big deal. The whole town would have known about it. And then to run out of wine, to run out of something would be just embarrassing, wouldn't it? It's like inviting all of you guys over and we're all going to have a big barbecue. And then I turn around and I'm like, Beth, where's the burgers? And she's like, well, I told you to get them. I was like, no, I asked you to get them. No, what? What do you mean? It's like, it would be pretty embarrassing, wouldn't it? Hi, you all came and then I've got nothing to offer you. Okay, it would be super embarrassing. But not only that, it's culturally could be shameful. And there were also certain things that were done as part of the wedding ceremony and certain symbolism that was used. And we don't know, but maybe if they hadn't already done that part of the wedding ceremony, it could have even been just embarrassing and shameful in a more, it's like forgetting the ring. You show up and you forget the ring to get married. It's like, you're numpty, right? It's a big deal. This is a huge deal. And then Jesus says this thing to his mom. He's like, woman.
It doesn't work, actually. Don't try that at home. Woman. I could just imagine my young son upstairs on the Xbox. Dinner's ready. Woman, why do you bother me? I'm still waiting to conquer whatever. Anyway, so my time has not yet come, right? And then his mother says to the servants, "Oh, just do whatever he tells you." Isn't this such a funny human story? It's pretty crazy, really. And I know we joke about the phrase "woman" there, but it's actually a respectful title. Jesus uses it a number of times. At the woman at the well, is a woman that's caught in adultery, and people are like wanting to kill her. They're like shouting for her death, and he reaches out and says, "Woman, where are your accusers?" So it's actually it doesn't work in English, but at the time culturally it was a respectful term. But I wonder if he just was a bit like, "Woman?" No, I don't know. That's adding into the text. But anyway, anyway, so that's what it does. And he uses that phrase a number of times in ancient literature. And so she just kind of seems to does she just walk away? Like, what happened between those 2 points? It's like, my time hasn't yet come. Just do whatever he tells you. It's like, wait, I don't know what happened between those points. But that's how it's recorded. And then, here's what happens next. It says, nearby, there was 6 stone jars, the kind used for ceremonial washing by the Jews, for ceremonial washing. And each stone jar held 20 to 30 gallons. And Jesus said to the servants, "Fill these jars up with water." And so they filled them to the brim. John tells us exactly what these are for. And if you were around at that time, if you were part of the Jewish culture, you would know what these types of jars are used for. And he just has to say the 6 stone jars for ceremonial washing, because there was a lot of rules about how you washed yourself. How you washed your hands, and how you wash before you pray, and how you do certain things at certain times. When I've been in Israel, I was in Jerusalem at the Wailing Wall, and there's places where you can wash your hands before you go to the Wailing Wall. And depending on which sect of Judaism you're involved with, like as you go forward to these places where you wash yourself, people are washing up to their elbows, or washing up, behind. And if you know any Muslim friends or Islamic faith followers, they have certain washings that they must do before they do their prayers. Okay, this is ceremonial washing. This isn't a strange concept to us, but this is why they have these big stone jars. 6 big stone jars used for ceremonial washing. By all accounts, it sounds like they were empty. And Jesus says, fill them up with water. So it's crazy. And they're like these 6 things that are these icons, and he's going to take these 6 stone jars and replace it with something better. He's going to replace it with something different. These are these 6 stone jars. They represent the rituals, the ceremonies, the traditions. This is what these represent. And then the story carries on. So then it goes to this. It says, take some of it out, the water, take some of the water out and give it to the master of the banquet. And so they did this. And when he tasted it, he did not know where it came from. And then John's put in brackets, but the servants knew. It's just funny, the way these stories are written, it's just like, oh, right, he didn't know, but hey, the servants knew. Anyway, and he calls the bridegroom over, and he says to the bridegroom, everybody brings out the good stuff first. And when they've had a few drinks, you bring out the cheap stuff. Yeah. But you have saved the best until last. I used to work in a hotel up in Lancashire. And I kid you not, when there were weddings or parties, they would serve the bottles, they'd bring out there, he'd say, this is the wine, to go to the top table, and he'd open it, and he'd pour it out like this, and then people would come in and start serving wine. But you didn't know that behind the scenes, those bottles were empty. And they just put them under boxes, and opened the boxes, and filled it up, house white wine, house red wine. Now, you didn't know that because you were at the top table, and you got served the nice stuff. And if you were the dad or the mom or the parents, you paid for all the nice stuff for all the guests, but actually all the guests got served wine out of a box. Yeah, not a very good business model. And you understand the economics of what this guy's talking about. He's like, come on, economically, everybody serves the nice stuff first. And then as the celebrations go on, because these events last for a couple of weeks, it's not like everyone's just getting hammered a couple of days. It's not just a big, get hammered fest. This is just like the way it was. This is just what they had, right? So, this refreshments would have to last for days. It's 3 or 4 day events. And he's like, but everybody, after a while, people just don't get bothered anymore. They're just thirsty. They've been here for a couple of days, and everyone gives them the cheap stuff. But you have saved the best until last, which is super crazy cool. And that's a lot of liquid. Okay? It said that they were 20 to 30 gallons. And a gallon is 750 ml equivalent bottles. So that's like loads. I'll tell you how much it is. It's like the equivalent of 500 to 750 bottles of liquid. That's a lot. That's a lot, right? And Jesus has this huge thing that provides for everyone. Everyone at the wedding. Everyone receives the benefit. Everyone from the town. Everyone from that village. Everyone who'd come to that wedding. Everyone received this gift. Even though most people didn't know where it came from. But the servants did. And whether they realized it or not, whether they realized where it came from or not, only a few people knew what was going on. Just kind of an interesting aspect into the generosity of who Jesus was. That he'd bless everybody there, whether or not they knew it was him that did the blessing. Whether or not they actually believed in him, trusted in him, had faith in him, is irrelevant. He just blessed people because that was who he was. See, this is John's trying to show us. Remember, the sign points to an event which points to who Jesus really is, which is cool. This is crazy. And then John says this: what Jesus did here in Cana was the first of the signs to reveal his glory, and his followers believed in him. See, something happened which allowed them, it was evidence, which allowed them to have confidence, and they began to believe in who Jesus was. They believed because of the sign. They believed because of what they had experienced. They believed not because of blind faith. They believed not because they hoped something would happen, and it did. They didn't believe because of that. They didn't believe because they prayed and hoped something would happen. They believed because of what they saw and experienced. And that's the same for us. We believe because there's a reason to believe. They believed because there was a reason to believe. Maybe to us we can read this and we think, wow, that was a really cool party, it'd be awesome to be able to do that. I just could see myself now going to like Sainsbury's, wherever, get some 17 bottle of, Savers bottles of water. Wouldn't that be that would be a cool party trick if that got turned into wine, right? You think, oh, this is kind of a cool trick. But Jesus wasn't just doing a cool trick. He was doing something more than that. He was doing something to show us who it was, or maybe people might read this story and they think, oh, it's just Jesus being kind. He didn't want that family to be embarrassed, so he just made sure that they weren't going to have public embarrassment and shame at their wedding. But John says it's something more than this. John says it's the first sign. John doesn't say he's being kind. John doesn't say he's just doing random generosity or feeling sorry for people. John says this is the first sign. The first sign. The first sign that points to who Jesus was. The first sign that's going to reveal something that was hidden before but now is being seen. The first sign that points the direction. And the funny thing is, it's not really a life or death story. Nobody's life is on the line in this story. Is it, right? It's not a life or death story. But John still says it's the first sign. And Jesus uses that moment to go public. So I think we should ask the question, well, why? Like, why? There must be something more happening. There must be something going on. And the clue is in 6 stone jars that are standing there empty, used for ceremonial washing and ritual and tradition. 6 stone jars as an icon, a symbol of all of the stuff that you have had to do up until now. And Jesus is going to do something different and better. He's going to replace what was, not that what was wrong, but what was insufficient. And he's going to replace all of that system. He's going to change the whole system. And it's not a cheap alternative. It's something totally different. It's something totally better. The best was saved until now. The master of the banquet says, how could you have saved the best till now? The best was saved till now. You know, and when Mary comes to Jesus and says they've run out of wine, I mean, it's just such a simple way to say it's empty. We're running on empty. You know, it's empty. There's no more wine. These big stone jars are empty. There's an emptiness in this stuff. There's an emptiness in everything we try to maintain through ritual or tradition. It's like saying, you know, if we just try to keep up appearances, it'll never work. Did you catch that? What's being said there? And if all we do is try to keep up rituals and keep up the traditions and the rules of external stuff, which is what washing yourself is about, if all we're trying to do is maintain the external appearances, we're going to run on empty. Because if you've ever lived that way, I've done that in my past, in my life at times. I've tried to just keep up appearances. And you know what? You can't keep up appearances forever. It becomes so hard. You all of a sudden feel like you're just living this fake life because you always you just, everything you're doing, and you become so self-conscious of how you're doing everything or not doing everything. All of a sudden, it's all about this behavior, and you try to fix yourself all the time. And the thing is, you know this is true. Whether you follow Jesus or not, the more you live your life like this, the more empty you feel because you're just trying to do it. And it's like a big chasm that will never, ever be filled. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, this type of living is empty because it doesn't actually fulfill anything. And these stone jars were used for washing on the inside. But where does wine go? Sorry, these stone jars. Let's try that again. These stone jars were used for washing on the outside. But wine is used for the inside. I got it that time. And don't you know this? You know this is true as well. You don't even have to be someone who follows Jesus. You know this is true. The real issue is not what's on the outside of you. The real issue is what's on the inside of you. Because you can look like a nice person, but inside your heart, you could just hate everybody. You could be bitter. You could be cold. You could be twisted. You could be ungrateful. You could be angry all the time. Maybe your colleagues don't know that. Maybe your neighbors don't know that. But you know that the real issue is not like how much we clean ourselves up on the outside. The real issue is what's going on the inside. See, Jesus is replacing the whole system with something better. He takes those stone jars, which were used for one purpose, and he changes the purpose entirely. These stone jars, which represented ritual and tradition and ceremony, he takes those jars. Like, why would you take those? You didn't have to use those jars. He took those jars. This is the sign. It's not that all of a sudden, wow, there's a bunch of wine. That wasn't the sign. The sign was this. Jesus is the something better that was promised for an empty life. That's the sign. You see, the sign, the event, it points to who Jesus is. And then John, who's an eyewitness, he's inviting us to consider the evidence for ourselves. And as the source of that evidence, he's wanting us to discover something better and different to what we've known before. He's saying, I was here, I was there, I was an eyewitness to these events. You can have confidence when you trust the source. You know, this is how John's laying it out, because he wants to help people on their journey of belief. And this is what makes following Jesus so incredibly significant and different to a lot of faith systems. You're invited to discover. You're invited to learn more about Jesus. You're invited to discover more about Jesus. You're not told what to believe. You're invited to learn more about what Jesus is like. And when you learn what Jesus is like, you begin to learn this is somebody that I can trust and believe in. That's the way it worked. That's the way Jesus invited people to trust in him. He didn't say, just trust me. He said, come and walk with me. Come and learn what I'm like. Come and learn the rhythm of the way I do life, and you begin to learn that I'm somebody that you can learn to trust. This is how it worked. This is how Jesus did it. And we somehow over the years we've forgotten that this is the way Jesus invited people to learn more about him. And you don't have to create faith or force belief. John's just like, journey with me, and discover for yourself. Consider the evidence for yourself. It's pretty cool. John, who was a simple fisherman, looking back at the end of his life, writing about the experience that he had. And this encounter changed his life. It totally changed how he saw himself. It changed how he viewed the world. It changed how he viewed others. It changed everything that he thought he knew about God. It changed everything. Because John was one of those people that used to live his life always washing on the outside and not realizing that the real issue was on the inside. See, it changed everything about John. It changed the whole way he lived. And that's why John could then write, at the end of his life, he wrote this phrase, and you've heard it already loads of times. Whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, you've heard this said. God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but actually have everlasting life. And God didn't send his Son into the world to destroy the world, condemn the world, write the world off. God sent his Son into the world to save the world, to rescue the world, to salvage the world. You know who wrote that? John. This guy, John, at the end of his life, can say with confidence, God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. God did not send his Son into the world to punish the world, to destroy the world. See, God was not angry with you. God was for you. God did not send his Son into the world to destroy the world, but God sent his Son into the world to rescue the world. John can write that with confidence because he discovered who Jesus was. That's what we're going to be looking at all the way from now up until Easter. I want to invite you to journey with John. Journey with us as we journey with John and look at the signs. Every week we're going to look at a different sign. And John listed them out for us. So we're going to look at all the different signs. And we're going to journey with John all the way up into Easter. And I invite you to discover why you can believe what you believe. Can we pray now? Jesus, I just thank you so much because this is so cool to discover that you invite us to discover more about you. We just thank you that your heart is for people. And that wherever we are today, whether we're here in the room or online, God, wherever we are today, I thank you that you are inviting all of us to just discover more about you. Thank you that you don't tell us what to believe, but you invite us to consider the evidence. God, thank you so much for that. I thank you that you dealt with the real issue, which is always what's going on inside of us and not what we do on the outside. Jesus, thank you so much. God, in your wonderful name we pray. Amen. I'm super excited about this series. If If you don't know, then we're just going to keep doing this. I'm just really excited. So if you want to watch it again, invite friends and family, please feel free to do so, because we want to be a place where people can learn what it means to find and follow Jesus. Have an awesome rest of the day. Grab some drinks, grab some coffee, hang around, and we'll see you soon.